In 2017, we saw something special, as the newly formed Vegas Golden Knights took the league by storm by winning their first 10 games in a row, and well, they also made it to the Stanley Cup Finals, which has cemented them as the most successful expansion team in NHL history. And just 3 years later, we have the official announcement of the Seattle Kraken. And through all this excitement and discussion, one major question is posed. Will the Kraken be able to replicate the Golden Knights' success? Or perhaps was the Golden Knights' success just a fluke? In today's video, we're going to be jumping on the hype train by doing a Seattle Kraken expansion mock draft. And with that, we'll be going through every single NHL team and trying to understand who they could potentially select. And we'll be trying to answer the question, will the Seattle Kraken be able to replicate the Golden Knights' success? And I do want to preface, of course, many things will change from now until the draft, and I'm not taking into account when teams are going to trade prospects and picks for them to dictate who the Seattle Kraken actually select, so please do keep that in mind. As we saw many teams shovel out first round picks and prospects to the Vegas Golden Knights during their expansion draft. So comment down below who you think your team will be losing during the Seattle Kraken expansion draft. Press subscribe for some more awesome content. Let's get straight into this video. Starting with the Anaheim Ducks, I have them selecting Sonny Milano. And I've always found Milano to be very intriguing, as he could never get his proper footing in Columbus, but he's a player who's full of skill and can still mold into that scoring top 6 winger. From the Arizona Coyotes, we have Antti Raanta. And the Kraken would have some options in terms of bottom 6 players, some top 6 defenders, but if Arizona still has 2 starting goaltenders in Raanta and Darcy Kuemper, it would only make sense that they select one if they're not protected. Because Raanta and Kuemper are arguably the best goalie tandem in the entire NHL. And this year they proved exactly that, as Raanta put up a very impressive 921 save percentage and 2.63 goals against average, and Kuemper, who is 1 year younger, put up a very impressive 928 save percentage and only a 2.2 goals against average. So unless Arizona gives up draft picks or prospects, I personally couldn't see Seattle not choosing whoever isn't protected. The Boston Bruins, we have Matt Grzelcyk. And Boston has a great issue, which is awesome depth. So Seattle is either going to get a potential player or a player like Matt Grzelcyk, who has served as an undersized but awesome top 4 defender. From the Buffalo Sabres, we have Henri Jokiharju. And Buffalo is kind of in that weird position, as they have a plethora of potential stars who just haven't broke out yet. So in terms of protection, Buffalo could go a couple different directions, but losing Jokiharju makes the most sense to me. Calgary Flames, we have Rasmus Andersson. And Calgary is definitely in a bit of a tougher position, as they have 5 top 4 legitimate defenders. So regardless, they'll be losing someone like Andersson, TJ Brodin, Noah Hanifin. I don't think they'll protect Mark Giordano, but we'll see what happens here. And Seattle could go another way, a bit more riskier way, with someone like Sam Bennett, who's been pretty disappointing offensively, but getting a very solid top 4 defender like Andersson makes the most sense. Carolina Hurricanes, Jake Bean. And just like Calgary, the Canes have a plethora of great defensemen, alongside of some potential breakout defenders like Jake Bean and Hayden Fleury. And Jake Bean hasn't developed quite as expected, but he still has some great upside. And in my opinion, there's no way Bean gets protected, so I think Seattle scoops up Bean. Chicago, Olli Maatta. And the Blackhawks have a pretty weak crop of potential forwards that Seattle can draft. And so I just go for the best defender available, which in this case would be Olli Maatta, who has kind of struggled a bit in the recent years, but he's still relatively young and is definitely a serviceable defenseman. From the Colorado Avalanche, we have Philipp Grubauer. And Grubauer has proved that he's a legitimate starting goaltender. However, with the emergence of Pavel Francois, Colorado would have to give up either prospects or picks to keep both. So alongside Raanta and Grubauer, Seattle now has a great goalie tandem. Columbus Blue Jackets, Boone Jenner. Now depending on if they're able to get Raanta and Grubauer, Seattle may be picking up another goaltender from Columbus. However, I think Boone Jenner makes the most sense to me, as Jenner has been seeing some regression in his game and could honestly use a change of scenery, as he put up a career low 24 points this season, but has 20 goal, 40-50 point upside. So kind of the ideal player for Seattle to take a chance on. The Dallas Stars, Jamie Oleksiak. And I could see the Stars not protecting Joe Pavelski because he'll be around the age of 37 with a $7 million price tag. So maybe Seattle takes on Pavelski, but I doubt it. And Jamie Oleksiak is a very intriguing player, as he's 6'7", has a physical presence, and is proving to be a great defensive defenseman. Detroit Red Wings, Madison Bowey. And with Detroit being the worst team in the entire NHL, there is kind of slim pickings. So I think Seattle's best bet is to go with some youth here, and Madison Bowey is exactly that. He's definitely had his struggles, but he's still young and can still project to be a top 4 puck-moving defender. The Edmonton Oilers, Adam Larsson. And Edmonton is finally in a spot where they're building a decent blue line with Klefbom and Nurse leading the way, but the emergence of Ethan Bear and Evan Bouchard, I can imagine Edmonton either gives up picks or prospects, or they have to give up on Adam Larsson. Florida Panthers, Frank Vatrano. And I could see them either going Brett Connolly or Vatrano, but with Vatrano having a cheaper price tag and being 2 years younger, Vatrano makes the most sense to me. LA Kings, and kind of slim pickings here, so like Detroit, I see the Kraken going for youth. So I will go with Michael Amadio, who has served as a good bottom 6 player. The Minnesota Wild, Jonas Brodin. And I most likely think that the Wild trade away a pick or something so they don't lose Brodin, because if they do, that is going to hurt. As Brodin has proved to be an excellent top 4 defenseman who would be a major piece for Seattle. And I can't really imagine a scenario where Brodin isn't left exposed. Maybe Suter waives his no movement clause, but what do you guys think? This would be devastating for the Wild if they lost Brodin. Montreal Canadiens, Joel Armia. And Armia is a great secondary scorer that any team could use. He really found his footing this year in Montreal and is a potential 20-goal guy. Nashville Predators. And I could see Nashville opting to do the 8 players, 1 goalie, as they are very defensive heavy and they have some studs coming up in the pipeline. And so with the assumption that they're going to be able to protect Fabro, Ellis, Josi, and Ekholm, I could see the Seattle Kraken going for Kyle Turris, as Turris was once a star caliber player, but has been very disappointing in the recent years. And so this change of scenery could be exactly what Turris needs in Seattle. The Devils, Nick Merkley. Now this is contingent on whether he plays a full season next year, but the Devils are most likely not able to protect both McLeod and Merkley. And if they both play 40 games next season, which is a high possibility, Merkley could be a pretty tough player to lose, as he was a first-round pick in 2015 and still has some great upside. For the New York Islanders, we have Jordan Eberle. And the Islanders have a lot of older veterans. I could see them leaving exposed in order to not lose any young studs. And so Eberle, in my opinion, will be the odd man out. And he'll be a great piece for the Kraken's top 6. New York Rangers, Brett Howden. And Howden is that young, unproven talent, but has the upside of a potential top 6 centerman. And with the Rangers having a plethora of potential stars, Brett Howden just may be the casualty. Ottawa Senators, Vitaly Abramov. And again, kind of slim picking, so I'm going to go with Abramov, who is a high-risk, high-reward player. And he is undersized, but he may just have the upside of a top 6 scoring winger. The Philadelphia Flyers, Shayne Gostisbehere. And unless Philly trades Gostisbehere before the draft, this one is basically guaranteed in my opinion, as Seattle would be receiving that offensive defenseman who has been severely underperforming, but still has top 2 upside. Pittsburgh Penguins, Jared McCann. Another player who's been underperforming for the bulk of his career, but he has so much skill and still has top 6 winger potential. San Jose Sharks, Alex True, who actually played in the WHL for the Seattle Thunderbirds. And True is only 23 and shows great promise, as he was a great AHL scorer and will probably see some NHL time next season. St. Louis Blues. And the Blues are in a tough spot, because based on their current roster, they'd have to give up on Justin Faulk or a potential stud. And so if I were Seattle, I would go with Faulk, because even though he fell off hard with the Blues this season, he was a stud for many years in Carolina and could be a major piece on the Kraken's blue line. Tampa Bay Lightning, Tyler Johnson. Another highly speculated pick, as Johnson has been in trade talks for years. Not only that, but the Bolts could definitely benefit from shedding some cap, and they definitely have the depth where they're not going to be highly affected. Whereas Tyler Johnson could also be a potential first-line stud for the Kraken. Toronto Maple Leafs, Andreas Johnsson. And the Leafs have a plethora of studs up front, and so Johnsson may just be a casualty of numbers. as he was a stud last season, dealt with some injuries this season, but still projects to be a very good top 6 winger. Vancouver Canucks, Thatcher Demko. Now I do think Vancouver would trade away assets in order to keep both Demko and Markstrom, but unless Demko turns into a number 1 starter next season, I can't see Vancouver giving up on Markstrom. Because even though Demko's younger, Markstrom had a Vezina quality performance this season and only just turned 30 this year. Washington Capitals, Richard Panik. And depending on whether they're able to keep both Holtby and Samsonov, I'm almost guaranteeing that they don't have both of them by the draft, or they trade away other assets to keep them. And finally, we have the Winnipeg Jets, who will lose Jansen Harkins, who has been an AHL star and projects to be a top 6 player. And so here we have it, here is the roster. And looking at this team compared to Vegas, they don't have a potential 40-goal guy in my opinion, like a William Karlsson or Marchessault, but they do have an incredible defensive core, especially if Shayne Gostisbehere and Justin Faulk can rebound. And if they're able to land someone like Ranta and Grubauer, they would be top 5 in goaltending in the entire NHL. Drafting this team and looking at it, I could seriously see the Kraken being a competitive team. And you never know who could just break out, like William Karlsson, who went from 6 goals to 43. So if we do have some players like that, Seattle could be a special team in their inaugural season. But anyways guys, there is my Seattle Kraken expansion mock draft, so comment down below who you think your team will lose, or if you disagree with any of the selections I chose, and press subscribe for some more awesome content. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys later.